All right, welcome to The Explainer. This week was a tale of two completely different crypto markets. Seriously. On one hand, you had billions with a B flying out the door from the big names. But on the other, a couple of key challengers were pulling in some serious cash. So, what is going on? Let's get into it. And here it is, the whole story in one chart. Just look at this. On the left, a massive negative $4.2 billion pulled out of Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. Ouch. But then, look to the right. A positive $632 million flowing into Solana and XRP ETFs. I mean, you couldn't ask for a clearer picture of a divided market.
So yeah, we're looking at a huge divergence here. And figuring out why this is happening, well, that's pretty much mission critical for any investor in the space right now. So let's break it all down. Okay, first things first, let's set the stage. The general feeling across the market this week? It was not great. We saw a sea of red, and there's a pretty classic reason for it. What we saw was a classic risk-off mood. Now, what does that mean? It's basically when big investors get a little spooked by stuff happening in the wider world. Things like US-China trade tariffs. And when they get nervous, they sell off what they see as their riskiest assets. And yep, you guessed it, crypto is usually high on that list.
And Bitcoin really felt the heat from this. It dropped below that big, psychological $90,000 mark. Now that's a pretty steep drop, over 30% from its October high. And it for sure sent a bit of a chill through the entire market.
Ethereum didn't get a pass either. Nope, it broke below its own critical support level of $3,000. And with trading volumes also drying up, its monthly losses actually got even bigger.
All right, so that brings us to what was probably the biggest headline of the week, the great ETF exodus. This is all about the big institutional money-making moves. And hey, just in case you need a quick reminder, an ETF, or exchange-traded fund, is just a super simple way for big money investors to get exposure to crypto. They can buy into the fund on a regular stock exchange without ever having to worry about wallets or private keys. It's a huge deal.
So with that in mind, look at this number. A staggering $4.2 billion was pulled out of Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs this November. I mean, that's a record. This wasn't just a little dip. This was a massive, historic outflow of cash.
And you can bet analysts are pointing to this as a really clear signal. It's the big institutional players getting cautious and stepping away from what they see as riskier assets. Plain and simple.
So this obviously raises a huge question, right? What does this giant outflow mean for the two biggest cryptocurrencies as we round out the year?
But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because while the Titans were struggling, something totally different was happening with a couple of key altcoins. I love this slide because it shows the great divide perfectly. You've got the $4.2 billion out of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and at the exact same time, over $630 million is flowing in to Solana and XRP. So the money isn't just vanishing from crypto, it looks like it's rotating. And let's dig into those numbers a little bit. We're talking $382 million in new investments for Solana ETFs over just the last 3 weeks. And XRP? Get this, their ETFs launched and pulled in a massive $250 million on the very first day. That's a huge debut.
Okay, but here's the catch, and it's a big one. Even with all that money and optimism flowing in, these coins weren't immune to the wider slump. The overall market mood was just too negative.
And the proof is right here in the numbers. Even with those massive inflows, Solana's price still ended the week down 3%, and XRP was down 7%. It just goes to show you that a negative market tide can pull down even the strongest shits. So it begs the question, what's really going on? Is this the beginning of a big rotation of institutional money from the majors into the alts? Or is this just a short-term blip on the radar? I'm really curious. What do you think? Let us know down below.
Okay, let's look beyond just the price action for a minute, because even with all this red on the charts, there were some really key moves happening behind the scenes, signs that major players are still building for the future.
And we'll start with a pretty big one from the crypto exchange giant Coinbase. So they went out and acquired Vector, which is a decentralized exchange, or a DEX, on the Solana network. Basically, this is all about making trading on Solana faster and better for Coinbase users. It's a strategic move that could really pull a lot more people and activity into the Solana ecosystem.
And then there's Tether, the company behind the world's biggest stablecoin. They announced they're launching a new stablecoin called USNT. Now, the really key feature here,
It's being designed from the ground up to be US compliant. This is a big play to try and bring more stability and trust to the whole market.
All right, so let's wrap this all up. What's the big takeaway from a week with so many mixed signals?
Well, it's pretty clear. The market is not moving as a single unit right now. You've got two completely different stories playing out. On the one side, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, the big thing to watch is simple. Do those ETF outflows keep happening? And on the other side, for Solana and XRP, the question is, can these huge inflows possibly continue at this pace? And that really leaves us with the final question, doesn't it? This deep divide in the market, it can't last forever. Something's got to give. So which side do you think wins out next week? The bearish sentiment around the leaders or the bullish inflows for the challengers?